I'm Matt Bach. I'm the president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association.
I'm Deb Gesualdo. I am vice president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association and a public school music educator.
What got me into teaching was a great math teacher in my high school. I was not a great student initially, and she had a high degree of discipline in her classroom and taught me how to reason and how to be an organized student. And at the same time, I wasn't a very good reader, but my mom got me into reading Mad magazine. And then the subversiveness of that led to things like Kurt Vonnegut, which led to an interest in history. And by the time I was ready to go to college, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher of history. And in my career very early on, I noticed that there were a lot of interventions from political and economic forces, but also as local as like the assistant principal wanting me to modify the way I taught in a way that just didn't seem appropriate. And so the union very quickly became a way for me to preserve my love of curriculum and the classroom and the way that we deliver it as education workers.
What got me drawn into the field of education is the fact that I had some really great music and piano instructors when I was younger. And for me, going into education gave me the ability to share my love of music with other people, as well as be actively performing, because both are intrinsically connected when you're a music educator. What drew me into union work is not anything earth-shattering. It was the fact that I was asked to be part of the bargaining team in my local early in my career. I wasn't so sure I wanted to do it. I did end up doing it and noticed that it wasn't a very transparent process, and that made me want to be more involved in my union to build more democratic structures for myself and my colleagues. So as both a member of a local that has gone on strike and being president of the local at the time, I learned a lot about, strenuous union work, but also a lot about my friends, my colleagues, and my fellow union members. What I found is that we have more in common than not. People really care deeply about the people that they work with, whether it's teachers being really concerned about education support professional living wages, ESPs being concerned about our Unit B assistant principals and program managers, and everyone just caring about one another very deeply to the point that we actually bargained all of our contracts together at one table. What I learned is that people are really brave, they're really compassionate, and they're willing to put everything on the line to do what's right.
What I learned from being in a local that went on strike is that given the opportunity to participate in democracy, members will embrace that, and they will embrace the opportunity to take control of their work lives and set a trajectory for the things that they care about. I also learned that it's an experience of solidarity that's transformative. Many of the people I worked with for 25 years were rejuvenated and reaffirmed by the experience. And I also learned that the community at large, the parents, the students, and the community members in general, really appreciate public education and backed us the whole way through. I did not receive a single complaint, email, phone call, or otherwise, but what we saw is the community saw education workers taking the lead, and they followed, and they became very much a part of our campaign for better schools. And then afterwards, it continued onward, and the community was looking more with more scrutiny into how the schools were run and how it had gotten to this level. Members are concerned across the Commonwealth with funding and austerity budgets. This is not the way the wealthiest state and the wealthiest country in the world should be operating, and we need fully funded public schools, whether it's in an affluent town like Andover or a rural district that is suffering from a lack of transportation reimbursement from the state. It's all the same issue. We are better than austerity perspectives and austerity mantras. We have to get the right funding into all of our public schools, fully funded public schools. One thing that surprised me about members was how conscious they were of the political and economic threats to public education. They're not maybe in the realm of all of the insider politics of the State House, but they're aware of what matters, and they're very protective of their students. They know that there is a rising lack of respect for what they do as a craft coming from big tech and AI, and they want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve on that.
As we were on the campaign trail, I think one of the things that surprised me the most when it came to concerns raised by our members is actually the similarity of concerns among pre-K to 12 educators and higher ed educators. The jobs are very different in some ways, but the concerns are very similar. Pushing back against big tech and AI, funding, thriving wages, protecting students and colleagues from authoritarianism in the workplace and in the government, and fighting the austerity narrative to ensure that everyone has what they need to learn, grow, and thrive. So our priorities aren't just the priorities of Matt Bach and Deb Gesualdo. I think it's really important for folks to know that. Our priorities are the things that have been brought up over the last several years by rank and file members of locals across the Commonwealth, local leaders, MTA executive committee members, and our board of directors. But I would say some of the things that have emerged as priorities is, full funding of public education, not just more funding, but fully and appropriately funding public education, protecting our immigrant students and colleagues, autonomy and dignity in the workplace, basically respect for us and our professions, and respect for our students and communities as well. There are a lot of priorities, but those are some of the ones that really came up over and over with folks.
Educator-led classrooms and work sites. We need to respect and value the expertise and the autonomy. And what comes out of that autonomy is not just a love of the craft of teaching, but also an enthusiasm that really rubs off on all of the students. It is a model to be enthusiastic about learning that students react to. And another priority that I think is really important is supporting locals that are doing really great campaigns and just changing the nature of their school districts and the quality of public education in their local area. We, as MTA, have the resources to really give them what they need and make sure that they have consistent support. Public education is the greatest invention of humanity. It is providing the only foundation for a thriving democracy and the most probable path to progress, because we're educating everybody. We're not turning everybody away. And there are problems, economic and political, that we have to recognize that want to make education exclusive and elite and diminish the openness. And MTA stands as the single instrument in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's going to lead on protecting those public education values. We cannot rely on electeds, superintendents, school committees, or the capital class to do it. We are the leader in that, and people of those other groups will follow, but we have to be the leader. So right now, public education is under attack.
And the landscape of the future of public education is something that's going to look really interesting. But I think it's important to make sure that we acknowledge that the landscape of organized labor is also going to look very interesting going forward, and they're both interconnected. MTA plays a really big role in protecting and moving public education forward. And obviously, as a labor union, MTA plays a role in protecting organized labor and the ability for all workers to organize. Matt is right when he says that the best way forward for progress is public education. I would add to that organized labor as well. And the reason they're both under attack is because the people who hold almost all of the wealth in this country don't want to see folks coming together in large groups, organizing, and potentially taking collective action and becoming strong, free thinkers. And so we're going to continue to see these attacks from the billionaire class and from our federal government as well. But MTA, and when I say MTA, I want to make sure that we're not thinking about ourselves as a third party. MTA, the union, is every single one of our members. It's me, it's Matt, it's all 117,000 of us. And it is our job to protect public education because it's really the cornerstone of a free and just society. So coming from a pre-K to 12 union, it is definitely a learning curve when it comes to organizing with and learning from our higher education locals. That even though our jobs may look different, a lot of the concerns are the same. And when we can identify those concerns and we figure out what is deeply and widely felt, that's how we build a stronger union and we unite pre-K to 12 and higher ed and figure out how to organize and move forward when it comes to our common concerns and interests.
I'm really excited to work with higher education locals. At our summer conference recently, we had a big meeting of units across campuses. They were functioning sort of as a bargaining council in their own higher ed region, and about 50 people in this room representing the UMass system, the state university system, and the community colleges decided democratically on how they're going to attack a parameters campaign with the governor. Another great thing in higher ed is the recent fair share application of free community college. And this has just been embraced and the student population has expanded. But what we have to do is focus on making sure that the correct staffing matches the student enrollment, and also that the staff is keeping up with other state community colleges in terms of compensation. So excited to work with higher ed on these campaigns.
We're both really excited about this work with the Massachusetts Teachers Association, with our union siblings, pre-K to 12 through higher ed, retired members. We're so excited to build stronger relationships. And I think one of the things that is really cool is our retirees are so active around everything from testifying at the State House to showing up on picket lines to being silent reps and bargaining. And it's really exciting to see folks who essentially don't have to be involved, choosing to not only be involved, but popping up across the state to support escalating campaigns in all different locals.
I think that, again, education quality has something to do with experience. And the opponents of public education want to make it seem like we can have a revolving door and a churning of education workers that are replaceable. And what the retirees show is that a lifetime commitment to public education is of the highest value to not only the students, but the teachers who are entering the field and need that type of mentorship. New educators should stick with it. There is a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning, but the experience really matters. And becoming an experienced educator has so many satisfying and gratifying moments. And get involved in your local association as soon as possible. Don't let people turn you off or scare you away. It is a great moment to be part of something bigger than yourself by joining and participating in your union.
If I were to think back on what I would have liked someone to tell me when I was an early career educator, it would be, first, don't be afraid to get involved in your union. It is okay to get involved before you have professional teacher status. I did, and I was nervous about doing so, but I'm still here to tell the story many, many years later. The other thing I want folks to know is that when you work in education, whether it's as a teacher, an ESP, a bus driver, a custodian, whatever your job is, you have a tremendous impact on the students in the school and across the community.